And I think one of the biggest misconceptions and things that grinds my gears, and probably yours too, on the online space is that we're now labeling every friggin' symptom as perimenopause,
Yeah.
which is dangerous territory.
Thank you.
I'm Ann Marie McQueen, journalist and proud 50-ish woman, and we are here looking for the true truth in perimenopause, menopause, midlife, and beyond.
Opening our minds to other possibilities is not always easy.
Hop, I think.
You're all woman to me. All right, Annemarie.
Thank you for having me, Emery. I'm delighted and honored to be here.
I'm delighted to see you in your hot and bothered t-shirt.
Oh, yeah, I wore it just for you. Let's get the full view here for people who are
Awesome.
watching.
Okay, so first of all, you had an event. Tell me what happened. Tell me
Oh,
all
I
about it.
had an incredible, beautiful event called Woman Up. And Woman Up is an event that was designed to help women up level their health and happiness. And we brought together some really big, influential names in the Canadian menopause space. So I had the audacity to ask Jen Huber, who on Instagram is a menopause nutritionist. She's a naturopathic doctor, registered dietitian who just wrote a book with recipes. It's so much more than a cookbook called Eat to Thrive During Menopause. And Shirley Weir, who's created an incredible online community called Menopause Chicks and is now really working to bring menopause knowledge and policy into the workplace in Canada. We had over 100 women in attendance in Uxbridge, Ontario. We gathered, and the feedback that women had was so incredible. By lunchtime, they were asking us if we were going to host it again.
Amazing.
And just so powerful and empowering to bring women together in solidarity and shared experience, in a desire to learn more about their health and to put themselves first, as cliche as that sounds, to really reclaim parts of them that have been left behind. I was just so honored to have them comment and say, like, this is actually what women in midlife need, like this experience.
Yeah.
And Jen Huber said at the end, she was like, the energy in the world changed to become more positive because of what we did today.
Amazing.
Yeah, and just like to have those women say, like, that I look up to as role models and incredibly influential people say those things was just, yeah, my heart like burst wide open. I think it illustrates when we bring women together and when we give them knowledge, they make incredibly wise decisions.
Yeah.
It's sorting through, which is why I love you and your platform of like sorting through the bullshit. There were two main themes that came out of the feedback from the event, and that was women want more time to intentionally connect with each other, which I think is such a beautiful thing. And they want the nitty gritty, they want the knowledge, and they want the science. Because it held the day as a very inspirational, aspirational, motivational event. We did give them lots of great content, but they wanted more of that. And I was like, yes, we showed them that when they have that and when they have the knowledge, and then just hearing really powerful but simple stories. Like, I held my group last night, one of the group programs I run, and one of the women there, her sister came to the event, and her sister has already had a follow-up appointment after the event with her doctor and went into the appointment prepared with some of the script tips we gave them and like
Mm.
understanding her iron results and being like, okay, this is what this means and this is what I want to do about it. I get goosebumps as we're talking about it because I'm like, that is how we are going to save this system that is failing us. It's not going to come from the top down. It's going to come from patients demanding better care and patients taking on that radical responsibility for their health and healthcare. And if I can play even a small role in that, I am so excited and totally here for it.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about that. I'm all about that. And I feel like when you said the parts of ourselves that we've lost, one of one of those parts is the actual responsibility for our own health. We've sort of outsourced it to our
Yes.
doctor. We like they keep track of things, they explain things, and that's perpetuated in sort of the mainstream medical system too, right? This is your blood work and I'll tell you about it. And I feel like midlife is a calling in many ways, but one of them is tr- figure this out yourself. It's not that hard. Can you just speak to that? Because it is
Oh, yes.
overwhelming, but when you actually can interpret, just read your own blood work and understand, you're not sitting there just waiting for someone to tell you.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And if you look at the generational differences of how healthcare was experienced and approached, like we idolized doctors because they had knowledge that we didn't. And now we have increasing access to this knowledge. And I literally said to my friend this morning on the phone, I'm like, we're going to piss a lot of people off when patients know more than the doctors.
Yeah.
And I say that with respect because and it's not the doctors, it's a system. So I want to make that very clear. I have a family doctor. I love and adore and cherish my family doctor. I've worked very hard to establish working relationships with the doctors in the small town that I practice in. And so it's the system that's failing us. I do have a belief like they all went into this out of a desire to care for other people and make a difference. But the volume and the mass chronic health concerns that we are dealing with cannot be served in the model that we're operating under. And the reminder that I gave to women at the event, and I always give to my patients and to my community as a whole, is if your blood work is being quickly reviewed, it's only being looked at for flags. Is it low? Is it high? You can sit in the normal range, but it may not be optimal. It might be 2 points above a deficiency. So, the
Mhm.
example I gave at the event is I have this lovely patient who has abnormal uterine bleeding. She's in her young 30s. She bleeds 3 out of 4 weeks out of the month. She obviously feels exhausted, went to her doctor in late 2024, said, I'm tired, I'm bleeding a lot. Can we do some blood work? He did. Her ferritin was 32. Below 30 is classified as a deficiency. Her doctor said, your iron is fine. You don't need to supplement. So, of course, she then proceeds to think that there is something really wrong with her
Yeah.
because she feels like garbage and was told her blood work is fine.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, continues to bleed 3 or 4 weeks for 6 months, comes to see me. I repeat her blood work. Her ferritin is now 8. Not that complicated. This is why I get fired up because I'm like, this is not controversial. This is not complicated. This is so simplistic. Look at the person who is sitting across from you as a human being. Listen to what they're saying. And here's a concept, believe them.
Yeah.
Like, it could literally be that simple of like, I'm tired. Okay, let's talk about that. And we all bring our biases to experiences, which is very real. And Shirley made such a great point at the event in that if you go to your doctor and say, I'm having trouble sleeping, you're typically talking to someone who at some point was highly rewarded for lack of sleep.
That's a really good point.
And in their residency, in their training, it was like who gets to wear the badge of how long
Yeah.
they've been awake for, right? Who's
Yeah.
been awake the longest? How long did you stay up to do that surgery? How many patients did you see over the night in the ER or whatever it is, which is like admirable, absolutely. And thank goodness we have those people who can work shift work and do those tasks and care for us around the clock. But that biased experience of, well, sleep disruption, sleep deprivation, sleep loss, like it's just what you got to do. It's just what happens. It's how you get ahead, blah, blah, blah. So when you bring that experience that you're having that's massively disrupting your life when it was something that gave somebody else accreditation, acknowledgement, award, accolades, praise, they don't see it through your lens unless you spell it out for them
Yeah.
and say, my sleep loss is a problem for me. This is massively disrupting my quality of life. It's impacting my ability to work. I'm worried about driving to work or home and falling asleep. My relationships, I just fight. Like I'm picking all the fights. And I like when you spell it out like that, it's like, oh, well,
Yeah.
just like I never thought of it as someone who I'm like, I can't imagine not sleeping
Yeah.
because I've been there. I can't imagine. But I have that appreciation because of how much it impacted me negatively, but for somebody else's experience. So it just shows how we do have to take that radical responsibility for ourselves. We have to honor our symptoms and how much they're impacting us, no matter how they compare to somebody else, because we do this thing as women where we minimize and dismiss our own selves of like, oh, well, my hot flashes aren't as bad as so and so's. My
Or they've
periods
gotten
aren't as heavy
better.
or
You
painful
know,
as
I
her. Yeah, it's gotten better. It's not that bad. I can manage. oh, my mom had it too, blah, blah. So then we dismiss our experiences and we wait until it's bad enough, whatever that is. And we don't even give ourselves permission to say, like, this is really impacting me. This is a problem. This is disrupting my quality of life or ability to function. So the first part comes with like really being honest with ourselves, which I think is amplified in midlife because our hormones buffer our tolerance for all the things, for
Yeah,
stress, for, I guess that's the easy, like our hormones buffer our tolerance for stress.
I love that.
And that's physiologically been documented and established. That's, again, not complicated or controversial. And so when you lose those hormones, you lose your tolerance for bullshit. You lose your tolerance for stress. And so what do women say? I feel less resilient. I feel like I can't cope. I feel overwhelmed more easily. I'm more anxious. I can't sleep. And it's because what your body needs now is not the same as what it needed last year, 5 years, 10, 20 years ago, because you are not the same. And so if we can take that and first honor it for ourselves and put words to that and acknowledge it ourselves, then we can take it to somebody else and say, this is what I'm experiencing and this is how it's a problem for me. And I want to do something about it.
I love that you're teaching women how to do that. Your own healing crisis. Can you talk about that?
I shared the story at Woman Up as well. And it, I mean, it's so ingrained, right? So my parents were teachers and my parents were also of the generation where like they were the first to go to school and get a secondary education, post-secondary education. And so that education was always a priority in our home and emphasis, like do well in school, put school first and all of those things, which is a beautiful thing and opportunity. But I really learned to like put everything in that. And so I'll give a short long
Mm.
version of it in that I did a high school year abroad in New Zealand and I had the opportunity to do a photography class. I thought that was super cool. Came home, I was like, I want to do photography. But I had to fulfill a grade 12 science credit. So I did chemistry, fell in love with science, then said, actually, I want to do forensic science because CSI was all the rage. And I had to fulfill a second grade 12 credit, science credit. So I chose to do biology. I started it halfway through the year. I simultaneously taught myself the first half of the year while learning with my peers for the second half, doing tests when I was ready on the first half of the material through the teacher, and applied to a forensic science program that only accepted 40 something students, got accepted, wrote my MCATs, applied to medical school, didn't get in, but then went to teach English in Korea for a year, studied while I was there to get a psychology credit, to then apply to naturopathic school, started naturopathic school in January so I could go through until end of August and then start second year in September. And right out of graduation, then started a practice, opened a clinic, had a baby, COVID happened, had another baby. And my second son was born 2 days after I finally cleared my COVID infection and developed acute appendicitis. So I was code blue, rushed into the OR. He was taken out, and then my appendix, and I had an umbilical hernia repair. So I had a 3-in-1.
Mm.
And he was in the NICU for 13 days. And I saw patients from the NICU because it was an unexpected childbirth and I still had people in my schedule. So like it's exhausting just telling the story,
Yeah,
right? I
like
can
just
laugh
like
about it now.
You know the feeling when you tried all your health trends, but you're still tired, foggy, or just not yourself? It's not your fault. True health starts deeper at the cellular level. Enter the first ever longevity gummies powered by Mitopure. They're the only clinically proven urothalin A gummies designed to recharge your cells, boost energy, and help you feel strong and vibrant from the inside out. They're vegan and clean, and Mitopure's own testing shows they can add up to 12% more muscle strength in just 16 weeks. It's like giving your body a daily cellular tune-up. If you want to feel energized now and as you age, click the link to timeline.com in the show notes and use my code HOTFLASH for 20% off your first order.
yeah, just on and
Yeah,
forward and forward. Yeah.
on. And I felt like I was crushing it. I was doing the things, checking the boxes, feeling so good. And then at the end of January in 2024, my son was born in May of 2022. I had the worst flu infection and it I think my son brought it home from daycare. He developed pneumonia. I asked my mom to come and help us so I could still work. And she develops pneumonia. I'm super sick. I get a sinus infection, go on antibiotics. The pharmacist is like, this will make you shit your pants, which it did. And then I got my period. And it was just like,
Oh,
I felt like absolute shit for, it was like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And then it didn't clear. Like, you're like, okay, maybe tomorrow I'll feel better. Okay, maybe
yeah.
next week. And then it was like weeks and months where I had this lingering brain fog, fatigue. I had no creativity, which is very unusual for me. I had lower motivation and I just felt like I was having an out of body experience. So what I shared with you was the way I learned to describe it was like feeling homesick for my soul.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I was forced into taking a break and I chose to take a full month off of practice. And I had a lot of time to reflect. And I realized like I put everything, I had collapsed my whole identity and self worth and self value into my job and my work. And it wasn't giving me back. I have an opportunity to make an incredible income, but like the meaning. So the three criteria for burnout is when, you have emotional skepticism and cynicism. Like you're just like, I don't care.
Yeah.
And you feel like you're emotionally exhausted. You can't hold the capacity for other people. And you feel like you have, there's no return on your investment. Like the work that you're doing isn't making a difference. And so I had all this evidence on paper, but emotionally I was like totally tapped out. I'm like, okay, I need to take a break.
Yeah.
And so I did, and that was necessary. And that was a hard lesson. There's more stories I could go into there, but ultimately I had to hit pause, which is really hard for us to do, I understand, and reflect and sit with those hard things of like I've been choosing something outside of myself for so long and not and in the end it's meaningless, the title, the job, the house, the car, the pay, like what am I here for? I'm not even 40 yet. And
Wow.
so yeah, it was just this total. And now looking back, and I just listened to an incredible podcast episode that's really validating for these experiences of if you can turn a difficult, challenging, painful experience like burnout or depression and be willing to see the opportunity, be willing to say like, what's in this for me? Why did this happen for me? What am I supposed to learn here? What can I learn here? How can I carry this forward? And essentially turn it into some kind of spiritual experience, then your quality of life and your mental health and your all of that improves, and your risk of recurrence and recurrent depressive episodes and burnout goes way down. And I really feel like that's what happened. Like I had to go through, as my friend said, like it's the dark night of the soul.
Oh, yeah. Those are very
Yeah.
important. Like I've been through a number of them, but they're
Yeah.
necessary. Yeah. And I do think it's flipping it to like, why is this
Yes.
happening? Why isn't this working out? Like, why just to just like, okay,
Yep.
this is like something is, yeah, I'm not getting it. Like I'm not, it's nudging me towards something.
Hmm.
Like you were just saying that you manifested this event, you organized it all. That wouldn't have happened if you had continued to treat yourself like a cardboard box.
100%. And it was this interesting experience of like not being able to force it anymore. Like
Yeah.
I literally, I didn't even have a choice. I had nothing in me. So
Yeah.
eventually I reached this point where it's like, I'm just going to show up. I need to keep my income going to support my family. And I'm just going to show up for who's in my schedule. And I'm going to do like a really damn good job because I have the capacity for that. And that was, May of 2024. So we're a year and a half, and my practice and my patient experience and my love for my job, like, has just exponentially improved and increased. And I sat with a patient yesterday who's feeling burnt out. I'm like, we talked about all the angles, and I said, like, I deeply understand how you're feeling and the dilemma you're in. And I want you to know, like, on the other side, I woke up this morning, Monday morning, and was so excited to go to work and look at my schedule and be like, I love all these people who are in my calendar.
Yeah.
And so that's what I think of midlife is this reckoning. We talked about that when I had you on the podcast. And when you lose those hormones, and there's also a lot of external pressures on you from caring for kids that are getting older and more independent, parents who are getting older but more dependent, your own health challenges, maybe being at the peak of your career, all of those things, really do come to a head. And you have to sit with those questions of, okay, what is working for me? What do I really want? And what's in this for me? And what is my body asking for now? And it might be totally, it probably is totally different than what you needed before or what you imagine you might need. And when we are only ever spending our time and attention on everyone else and everything else, and when we're outsourcing all of that information and knowledge, not just to our doctors, but like we even do this with apps, right? Like an app to track your movement and your sleep and your calories and your da 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 da. And then it's like, well, how did you sleep? Wake up in the morning and check in with yourself first, because the app might not be accurately reflecting your
I'm so
experience.
glad that you have brought this up because it's one of those things where they build it and sell it to you and it seems necessary and helpful. But yeah, I've stopped. Like it brings out all my worst perfectionist tendencies. But I really like in the world we live in now, I really want to know how I feel and what my body is saying. So anyway, would you see this where people are tracking themselves?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a spectrum like always. So the trackers can be very helpful tools when used appropriately. So let's say in the context of nutrition, right? Like I had a patient who came in and one of her goals was weight loss, and I said, "Okay, on her intake form it specifically said, I can't lose weight no matter what I do." And so I said, "Okay, let's talk about that. How many calories are you consuming in a day?" And she was like, "I have no idea." And so I'm like, well, those two things can't be true. You can't not know your caloric intake and say that no matter what you've tried, you
Yeah.
can't lose weight. So we started with that of like, let's track and see. If you want to learn, then they can be very insightful tools. But the purpose of them is to drive and direct your behavior change. So if you're just going to look at the nudge to stand up or the nudge to go take a walk or that you're only getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep and not do anything about it, there's no point in tracking. But if when your Apple Watch is like, okay, it's time to stand, and you're like, great, I'm going to take a break, then perfect. It's helping support and reconnect with, reclaim those parts of us that are inherently natural. It's not natural to sit for 8 hours a day in front of a screen. And so I think it can be a bridge because we don't always, or we have become so disconnected from our own needs, our own desires, what's right for us. And at the beginning, you asked like what, or whatever, in an email previous, you said, what is the thing that women really need? It's like, when do you feel, as Martha Beck and Liz Gilbert, I heard them speak, and one of the exercises, it's like, what is the enchantment in your life? Like, when do you just feel so happy? I think you have the bliss list. Like, these are all the same things of like that first sip of your coffee in the
Yeah.
morning. And this morning, I dropped my son off. He goes to forest school on Tuesdays, and just walking and like crunching in the leaves and smelling
Uh,
that. Oh, I was just like, you get to be in this all day. Or, when you're on the beach and you hear the waves and you feel the sand between your toes, or you're like really cozy in your bed, or you're at the spa and you do the cold plunge and you go in the heat and you feel your skin tingle, or the smell of cinnamon buns or banana
yeah.
bread or whatever. None of those things actually cost that much,
Yep.
nor are they complicated or fancy, but how many of us actually regularly incorporate those types of things into our life when everything else seems more pressing and important?
Yeah, I've heard a number of ways to describe hurried woman syndrome, rushed woman syndrome. And I remember when I went to my first naturopath when I was in perimenopause, when I was struggling, I think my eyelashes had fallen out. So it was quite alarming. And I was obviously, wired and tired. But I remember her saying, when you describe your life, I don't see any fun in it. I don't see any creativity. You're just grinding, you're working. And she said,
Yeah.
you're going to get a autoimmune disorder. You're going to get cancer. That's what she said. if you keep this up.
Yeah.
If you keep this up, I don't know what I would have said. I would give anything to go back and listen, but I do remember that message.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
because I was like, I was a manager in a newspaper and I was obsessed with it.
You were
Yeah.
probably doing all the things you were taught to do.
Yeah.
You were told and sold a lie of like, these are the things that are going to make you happy.
Yeah. And I think when you're not feeling well and it's in perimenopause, and whether you know you're in perimenopause or you're not, you also double down on everything that you were doing to get back to where you were. I was on the radio with talking about all this menopause stuff with this woman, Helen Farmer, and she was asking me what she doesn't want to be in perimenopause, clearly. Like she had her doctor there and she's been doing tests. And
Let's
the
talk
women,
about
I want to
that.
know about this. You must have women, they don't want to be in perimenopause. They don't want to be in it, right? They don't want it like
Mm,
because she was saying, well, I just got really hot. And I was like, Helen, my hot flash isn't going to feel like your hot flash. You know what I mean? The
yeah.
first symptom
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
perimenopause is denial. But do you find this when people come to you, like they just
Oh,
don't,
that's so interesting.
we don't want it. Well, of course you don't want it. You were just 25.
Yeah, I think I have a mixed experience and maybe a biased perspective because the people I see are often pursuing some kind of validation because they don't feel well.
Right.
They don't, and there is a study actually now, and they called it the like, I don't feel like myself. Have you seen
Yes.
this?
Yes.
Yeah. And so they were trying to quantify, like, what does that actually mean though when women come? Because that is one of the first things women say in midlife and in perimenopause. I just can't put my finger on it, but I don't feel like myself. And so they then said, like, okay, but what does that mean? What are you experiencing? And you can look at the chart and they give a score. So essentially, it's like the frequency, what are the most frequent things that were reported? And it was like sleeplessness, specifically lying awake after 3 a.m. for an hour or more, like falling asleep fine, but then staying asleep, struggling to get back to sleep, I should say. And then, no surprise, fatigue, brain fog, irritability, anxiety, overwhelm. And so when you look at those things, they're so non-specific. We could do a validated anxiety questionnaire and probably score you quite high on that. So I am often seeing the person or woman who's coming in and is this perimenopause because I don't feel right in my body and my doctor has so far told me everything is normal or fine and I just feel like something has to be off with my hormones. It must be
Okay.
my thyroid. Am I iron deficient? And to that point, let's clarify a couple things. Like, there is no test for perimenopause. There is no objective way to measure PMS or perimenopause.
Yeah.
The only way, and this may change in the future, but the only way we currently can diagnose perimenopause is based on your menstrual cycle. And that the first stage of early perimenopause is when your menstrual cycle is varying by 7 days or more. So that means it's coming either 7 days or more earlier than your average or 7 days or more later than your average. So if your cycle was 28 days, now it's 21 or less or 35 or more. And that does not mean that you may not be feeling the effects of your body working very hard to conserve your menstrual cycle. When we are 40 or 45, our eggs are also 40 or 45. They've been with us since birth. So they have been through everything you have put your body through. I know.
Oh, that's
Every
so
time I
cute.
say that, I'm amazed and astounded. And the eggs that you have in your 40s are no longer the triple grade A eggs.
Yep.
Those eggs were selected long ago because they're going to be the ones that are going to produce that nice, robust hormone level. And by the time we're in midlife, the lower quality, lower grade eggs are attempting to go through development, but their hormone production is not as robust. And your brain is constantly monitoring this. It's just like a thermostat furnace feedback loop. Like your brain is checking in on those ovaries as if the ovaries are the furnace. Are you pumping out enough heat here? Are you making enough hormone? And when the ovaries don't make enough hormone, the brain or the thermostat kicks in and says like, come on, ovaries, pick up the pace. Like you're not doing your job. So what happens is you start to get these stacked cycles and stacked hormone levels. So instead of one cycle starting and stopping through until completion, a new one starting after the last one's finished, you get this like new cycle starting halfway or 3/4 through an existing one.
Yep.
And that's where you start to notice in the very late reproductive stage before officially entering early perimenopause, there's like a 2 to 3 day difference or subtle changes to flow. So I used to have that heavy day and now it's shifted, or I used to be 28 days and now I'm 25. That's that really late reproductive stage. And once we start noticing that your cycles shift by more than 7 days, you're in early perimenopause.
Yep.
The time we spend there is so variable. So typically it's like 4 to 7 years.
Mhm.
Once your cycles are every 2 months or longer apart, so now you're going 2 months or more without bleeding, then you're in that late stage of perimenopause. And that time and duration is more predictable. It's typically 1 to 3 years. So once you reach that point, you're like, okay, I'm on the home stretch. If you have an IUD, it can be challenging to navigate where you're in that mix because you may or may not get a period or bleed at all. And that's where you can use something like FSH, which is a simple blood test, and estradiol. If you aren't getting a cycle, you just have to do a stab in the dark and send you and see what's going on and try your best to guess. If you are cycling, you can do a test, ideally those two markers in blood on day 3 to 5. The challenge is that even those markers fluctuate so much, but we'll start to see patterns. So one measurement is never conclusive. It's like, what do the measurements tell us when they're measured, every 3 to 6 months for a year or two?
Okay.
And we're correlating that with your symptoms. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions and things that grinds my gears, and probably yours too, on the online space is that we're now labeling every friggin' symptom as perimenopause,
Yeah.
which is dangerous territory.
Thank you.
And yeah, it is. Like, I had a patient message, she's not even a patient. I had a person message me and was like, can you explain this, something I talked about more, because I'm going through a lot and I have numbness and tingling and passed out. And someone told me that could be perimenopause. I'm like, that is not perimenopause. You need to go and see a neurologist. Let's not, right?
Yeah.
Waking up tired with brain fog and struggling to sleep. Sure, that could be hormone changes, or it could be sleep apnea, which significantly increases in frequency and
Yes.
prevalence as
Yep.
we enter menopause and beyond. So it's like, we don't need, in almost all cases, we do not need to measure your hormones, because your hormones look like spaghetti on a wall. They look like a friggin' train wreck. And what we do need to do is look at the person, look at you, and say, like, what's going on? How are you feeling? What are
Yeah.
you experiencing? And
Yeah.
treat that. We can't balance your hormones in perimenopause. If anybody is telling you that, run far away very fast.
Yeah.
Like, we can't interrupt it. We can't delay it. We can't postpone it. We can mute it. We can put you on the birth control pill and wipe out your ovarian function for a while. Sometimes that's the best thing because the roller coaster is just too much. We can put you on an IUD and help control pain and irregular and heavy bleeding. We can put you on hormone therapy in perimenopause. You don't have to wait until you're done and bleeding and in menopause. And that's another key message, is like, not everything is perimenopause. Everything that gets listed under perimenopause is non-specific, meaning you have to do your due diligence and rule out other conditions that could be perimenopause. Hypothyroidism can also cause fatigue, brain fog, and irregular cycles. So, like, let's test your thyroid and your iron and your vitamin D and B12. I practice in Ontario, Canada. I am in a very upper middle class town. I recently had a patient who is vegan with a vitamin B12 that was undetectable. Undetectable. And she was not the first person in my practice over the past couple of months. I am like, how are you walking? And
Wow.
also, we live in Canada and you're so nutrient deficient, we can't even find it on a blood test.
Because she was vegan?
Yeah, so vegan and vegetarian diets, yeah,
Yeah, I know.
are inherently deficient in iron, protein, and vitamin B12. Not impossible to get it, but you have to be diligent and vigilant, and in most cases supplement, especially in the context of perimenopause. When you start getting more frequent heavy cycles, it's a recipe for disaster if you're not on top of it, right?
Yeah. I've never heard anyone
I-
talk about this, actually, this
Oh,
vegan
yes.
aspect. Yeah, so I'd like to
So-
dive into that a little bit more. You're the first person that's had the nerve to say
Okay.
anything about this.
Oh, yeah, okay. I told you I'm luteal.
I love it.
There's no filter today.
Right?
But what I want to say before that is, of course, women feel crazy. of course, you're going to go on TikTok and be convinced that you need to do a parasite cleanse because you're exhausted and you went to your doctor and they tested your iron and because you were 2 points above normal, they told you were fine and you didn't supplement. And now 6 months later, you're completely deficient, thinking
Mhm.
it's not my iron. I was told I was fine. So then we start going down these like wild and wacky deep rabbit holes in which we're grasping at straws because we're desperate to feel better.
Yeah.
But it's like, she's fucking iron deficient. Give her an
Right.
iron IV. Like the number of patients who, like another patient, post COVID, brain fog, long COVID, thinking like I'm destined to just be like almost on disability. She had to stop working, couldn't function, couldn't socialize. I see her in the summer, I think it was July. She's like, "Well, you look at my blood work from the past year. In February, her ferritin was 22. Below 30 is deficient." I'm like, "All of your symptoms can be explained by an iron deficiency."
Wow.
And she's like, "My doctor told me I could supplement if I want." She has seen an ENT, she has seen an immunologist, I think, or some like infectious disease. She's obviously seen her GP multiple times. She was waiting for a consult with a neurologist and an MRI. We did an iron infusion and all of her symptoms went away.
It's crazy. So she didn't, do you think the COVID like knocked her iron somehow or?
Yeah, I think inherently, like, again, if we're not taking radical responsibility for our health, if we're not eating well and fueling our body and getting outside and walking and moving and socializing in meaningful connections, we're gonna make choices, or it's very easy, like it's really easy to actually eat a calorically dense, nutrient poor diet, especially in North America.
Yeah.
And so if you're not conscious of what you're eating, I'm not saying you have to be perfect, but most university students are not going to get enough protein. I was B12 deficient in university too. And so I think it's always like one drop overflows the bucket in some ways. And so I think she was probably iron deficient and then the one more stress or infection, just like it was for me. Like there's just one thing that puts you over the edge at some
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
point.
yeah. You can handle it all. You can handle it all. And it's
Yeah.
often a small thing.
Yeah. And so I want to validate that experience of like, yes, you probably do feel insane. And you probably are Googling if you have cancer or some mysterious disease. But we have this saying in medicine, and it's when you hear hooves, think horses, not zebras. And that's because the most obvious, likely result and explanation is likely to be the right one.
Yep.
So I'm like, do you know how much money we could have saved in that one patient?
Yeah. Yeah. But on the
Let
medical side
alone
too, it's
her
not just
mental
on her.
health. That's what
It's
I'm
not
saying.
us
No, that's what
leaping
I'm
to
saying.
conclusions. It's like, why are we? Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Okay.
So and so what do you want me to say about about vegans?
No, just that if you're a vegan or a vegetarian and you've been tricking
Mm,
along nicely in your life and you hit perimenopause, maybe what will happen? What could happen? What
yeah.
do you need to be more
Yeah.
vigilant about? We're not judging anyone's lifestyle.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. So if you are vegan or vegetarian, then inherently plant-based diets are lower in protein, lower in iron, lower in vitamin D, and lower in vitamin B12. All of those richest food sources do come from animal-based sources and protein. And not impossible to get from plant-based sources and or with supplementation, but we just have to be aware of it. So when you move into that early stage of perimenopause, the when I said your cycles are at least 7 days apart, what is most common is that they come earlier. So now you're having more frequent cycles. And because of that hormone stacking I explained, you and loss of ovulation frequency, reliability, and robustness, then you now have estrogen dominance, which we can talk about that concept. And essentially, the uterine lining has a opportunity to grow more
Yeah.
and more and then be shed more and more because now you're having more frequent heavy cycles. And so the most common reason women have an iron deficiency is from their menstrual cycle, hands down. Like even before perimenopause. Then you put perimenopause in when they're heavier and more frequent on top of a protein, iron, B12, vitamin D deficient diet. I mean, even if you do eat meat, those are still really common deficiencies in dietary habits, your body just can't function. I always say, like, your hormones don't hate you. Your body doesn't hate you. It's doing the best it can with the resources it has.
Yeah.
Does it have the resources? Would you get mad at your car if it couldn't continue to drive, if it had no gas in the tank? No, you would be like, well, this is obvious. I didn't put
Yeah.
gas in the tank. Of course,
Yeah.
it's not going to.
Yeah.
It is literally the same, but for some reason, we have just like objectified our body or put these like really unrealistic expectations. I sat with a patient yesterday who was like crying because her digestion sucks and she's super anxious. And I'm like, well, do you eat while you work? Do you take a break? And I'm like, we need you to do like 1 minute of deep breathing has been shown to shift from sympathetic to
Yeah.
parasympathetic mode. Like, if we can't find you 1 minute, we've got a big problem.
Oh my
And
gosh. Yeah.
and so those are the things. And we have made it so much more complicated.
Yeah. Well, what I had huge, I had like leaky gut. I had a huge health explosion. Leaky gut, thyroid, fatty liver, the whole 9 yards. Kicked off by SIBO, but it was from chronic stress and IBS from a
Mm-hmm.
long time. But so I used an app, Nerva. Like I was like
Yes.
living like, like no, and that of all the things I did, and I did many things, I had a great doctor, but that app, Nerva, for 3 months, teaching me about the role of stress and digestion, I'd say it was 80, 90% of it. And even now, when my digestion starts to take a dive, I'm always second guessing what I ate, but I'm really much better now at going, yeah, but you went on vacation in July with your family and you were drinking and you ate Doritos and you had popcorn and you had all this food and you were fine.
Yeah.
Absolutely fine. You were watching the sunset and swimming in the lake. And I don't know, like this is just I want to get to talking to you. I want to talk about a couple of other things, but I want to talk about the bullshit. But this is what I see on social media where everyone gets so granular with like these these things, and if you're not doing like the relaxation, chill out your body, how is it supposed to digest its food and how is anything else supposed to work?
Yeah, it can't. And I'm so glad that you mentioned Nerva because I recommended it to her
Such a good
yesterday.
app.
I'm
Yeah,
like I feel like I'm one of their top referrals
I know. I
because they
tried
sent
to
me an
be an
email in the
affiliate
summer
for
and they're
it, but
like,
yeah, I
yeah,
don't
but
think
they
they do it.
can, if you refer people, they can get a discount. And then there's
That's
like no
amazing.
discount,
Yeah,
right?
I
So
need
it's
to do
just a
that.
nice pay it forward for you.
Yeah.
But it's true. And I kind of debriefed it after in the set. I said I had my group session last night and I was telling them about this experience and I was like, you know what? I'm just done with also sugarcoating it for people
Yeah.
because I could have sat there and been like, okay, let's try this digestive enzyme and let's put you on a more restrictive diet and let's do food sensitivity test. I'm like, no, I'm like, one, those things haven't been shown to be that effective. And two, like, I'm just going to do you a favor. And
Correct.
you might not be ready to hear this, but like, this is what actually is happening.
Oh,
And you're 28
yeah.
and life isn't supposed to be this hard at 28. And so if you continue on this path, what's it going to be at 38, 48,
Yeah.
58?
Doesn't get
Like
easier, really.
destined for a breakdown and major health crises, right? So it really does come back to that like pause, take a moment. Is this working for me or not? And those are hard conversations to sit with.
But
Important.
that's a good doctor because you know how many, there's naturopathic doctors out there who would be happy to do all that stuff and all that testing
Mm-hmm.
and know what you know probably deep down.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's really admirable. But do people want
Mm.
to hear it? Depends, eh?
Oh no. Yeah. So it's not uncommon that patients will comment at some point in their visit of, I didn't expect this to be a therapy session, but thank you. And I think that really is the goal because we can uncover so much of our suffering. My friend says like how you do one thing is how you do everything. And it's so true of like, if you're just grinding harder, if you're trying to work harder, but when you know it's not right, like I can't make the decision for her. I don't know, but it like as soon as we talked about her job, she got really emotional. With other patients, it's their marriage where
Mm-hmm.
they'll say things like, if we didn't have kids, I'd leave him.
Oh my God.
And so, of course, you're not sleeping when you're lying next to someone who you
Oh my God, it's
deeply
heartbreaking.
hate
Yeah.
and dislike and resent, of course your nervous system is like, I'm not going to enter the most vulnerable state that is humanly possible next to this human that you feel essentially threatened by.
Yeah.
It can be very confronting, and it can piss off a lot of people, and it can be activating or triggering. But
You're in a
do
great
you,
place though. You have a huge responsibility. When I was going through that eyelash thing and I mean, I was going to naturopaths who were giving me all the tests. It was costing thousands. And I ended up
mm-hmm,
in front of a trichologist, a guy
mm,
who treats hair loss. And he gave me a whole bunch of tests. He said, "There's nothing wrong. You're not pulling them out." And I said, "No." And he said, "How's your relationship?" And I
mm,
said, "I don't like it." I'll never forget this. He said, "If you need to bin the boyfriend, bin the boyfriend." This trichologist said that to me. And I felt like I was in the Truman Show. I'll never forget that moment. That was in my early 40s. And that was me bailing
mm-hmm,
from a relationship that I thought was going to be marriage and kids, but it just wasn't right. And it was one
mm-hmm.
guy, one hair doctor.
It only takes that one person, you're right. And so I will say, women come to me, back to what you were saying of like, do you get the people who don't want to be in perimenopause? I don't see that often because I think people are coming to me looking for some kind of validation or explanation for how they're feeling. And even though I may say those things, like your relationship or job, we'll still talk about or do testing for the things that are very clinically indicated and relevant, right? Like, I do want to know if you're iron deficient because
Yeah.
an iron deficiency, yes, leaves you fatigued, but also anxious and low on motivation. And so, like, are you feeling disconnected in your relationship, or are you like legitimately too tired to connect? And so we can do the testing, but there have been many times that even by my standards, the testing is fine, right? Like the
Yeah.
result, I'm like, you're not iron deficient. You are not hypothyroid. You're not inflamed.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong. Your job, marriage, whatever relationship is the thing. And we
Yeah.
can't quantify that. So it's hard
Yeah.
because we can't objectively measure it and put it on a scale or validate it in that way. And that goes back to, if you can't first acknowledge how you are actually feeling and what's true for you, then, and this starts in the smallest little way. So, how can people practice this? When you wake up in the morning, what do you feel like for breakfast? What do you
Mm.
feel like wearing? What do you feel like watching? What do you feel like reading? Like, when you go to a restaurant, don't ask everybody else what they're having, or don't ask the waiter or the server what they think you should have or what they like the best. Like, navigate all of that for yourself for a week, 2 weeks. And I've said that to groups of women before, and they're like, oh, like, I couldn't do that. Right? Does this look good on me? What do you think?
Yeah. Oh
Like,
God.
stop it. Stop
Yeah.
the focus group for a day, a week, a month, and
Yeah.
then see what happens.
I hear this a lot from people too, because there's so much information that I have friends that sort of just are pulling from everywhere, right? Like, but so many, it's like listening to just a crowded room of people telling you what to do. And it also provides a lot of noise and
Yes.
stops you from doing this hard thing, which is
Yep.
figuring out what you like. This to me is the most important thing. Like,
Yes.
this to me is like, yes, hormones are difficult. Yes, it can be a rocky ride, but underneath it all, you've lost your connection to yourself.
Hmm.
And you're saying that's a huge factor.
Yeah, I think it's the factor. And
I think we need to think of our doctors and the people our practitioners, we people seek help from, more as we're sort of the manager of a team. Like, we're sort of like engaging with
hmm
people and together we're making decisions. I wanted to go back to that woman though, because I realize this about myself. It's like when I get in that mood where I think, what is taking so long? Like, why isn't that happening immediately? I'm demanding that for myself the whole time, then too. Like, that's leading to
hmm
my burnout, right? Like, if I'm expecting
hmm
everyone to do something immediately, that means that I have that standard for myself and it's exhausting. And we have to all stop it, because just
a
because
hundred percent.
you can get everything you want in 5 seconds doesn't mean everything is
Hmm
going to happen that
hmm
way.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it just goes back to like the hormone therapy. Why does it work sometimes and not others? It- I don't think we'll ever develop an algorithm
Yeah.
in medicine that is adequate because our hormones make us who we are. They interact with each other, they interplay with each other, and how you feel is going to depend on like what else is going on in your body and your chemistry and your situation. And so I do think when you're sorting through all the information online, like where do you start? So I think the original question was like, how do I show up on social media? And I was like, well, when I have time and when I'm feeling inspired. And I like to say my practice is like a combination of science and soul
Okay.
because I did the science. Like I did that for 10 years and by the book, like evidence based, this is the thing. I think that came from trying to prove myself, right? Somebody else's metric of success. I need to show people I'm just as good as, just as smart as, just as capable as a medical doctor.
Yeah.
And now I don't need anybody else to tell me that. I know that.
Yeah.
And so I'm okay to show up and sit with the things like yesterday a patient came in and I coach my patients through they have the option of doing blood work through me directly. They do have to pay for it out of pocket or they can go back to their family doctor and we talk about that around like when that's appropriate to do and if it's appropriate to ask for or if it's clinically indicated. And in this case it very much was. This patient hadn't had blood work done in years. She has a strong family history of cardiovascular disease and rheumatoid arthritis. She's presenting with fatigue and joint pain. And so also had very heavy bleeding and sleep disruption. And so I write a beautiful letter back to her doctor and say, this is the assessment she scores for severe anxiety on the Hamilton Anxiety. I've recommended or informed her standard of care is medication and cognitive behavioral therapy. She is declining medication at this time. We've talked about the alternatives. Here is the blood work we discussed. This is why it's clinically indicated given her presenting concerns as well as her family history. She goes in to request the blood work from her doctor and she says, well, why are you here? I'd like to do some blood work. I'm working with a naturopath. Why are you working with someone who can't even help you? And she's like, well, I thought you might be interested in some of this blood work too. He's like, well, why does she want this? And she's like, well, she sent it in the letter. And
Oh
then
my
he
God.
proceeds to read the letter for the first time that was faxed in advance
Yeah, it didn't bother
with
me.
her there and is like, oh, okay, fine. I'll write the requisition. She's vitamin B12 deficient and screens positive for rheumatoid arthritis. And now he's written her a referral to a rheumatologist.
How crazy
But
is
I
this?
didn't help.
Oh
I
my
didn't
God.
help.
I was gonna say why it is so archaic. Like I feel like I was 10 years old when I heard doctors making fun of naturopathic doctors. Like I feel like this has been
Yeah.
going on. Like you can't have a straight face in 2025 and be a mainstream like clinician and be making fun of integrative or naturopathic doctors, but I see it all the time. I'm just
Yeah.
like, how can you guys even live with yourselves? They're helping people. Yes. Yes, there is the reputation that you can go and it's so much testing and it's this and that, but
Yeah,
you're,
100%. There's a big misconception,
yeah,
and some of those reasons are very valid. And we're seeing a big shift. There's a demand because it's not working. The
not
conventional
working.
system is
How
not
can you make fun of
working.
someone who's looking? I mean, the reason I think it's just unconscionable is because the mainstream is so much focused on people just as like separate parts that don't really interact with each other.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
this side is that you're looking at the whole human and
Yeah.
you're talking about anxiety and your relationships and but also how it all works together and the iron and the nutrients and it just feels like in 2025 how could you ever be making fun of that? How could that guy be like that? It just doesn't seem possible. It
I
seems
know.
like we're living in the past or something.
And one of your questions was also, why I interviewed Dr.
Oh
Vikram
yeah.
because I
It-
first heard him on your podcast.
yeah, go
And
back and listen to that.
um,
He's the best and then go listen to Leah's interview with him.
they were great episodes. And the reason I reached out to him was because he is a medical doctor and an obstetric gynecologist who's running the menopause clinic in London and is so well researched and so well accoladed and so well educated and he was willing to sit down with me and
Yeah.
have a conversation as an
Yes.
equal, as a counterpart, as a partner, as a allied healthcare professional who has
Yeah.
the best interest of our patients at mind.
He's delightful.
And he and that's why. And And that's why that episode is one of the top performing. Because how did I show up on social media for that? I asked people, the post was, what happens when an ND and an OB sit down
Yeah.
and talk about hormone therapy?
Yeah.
And people want to see that. So if you're a medical professional or if you're a patient who is working with a medical professional and you're not seeing that willingness to participate, we need to call that out.
Yeah.
And Rachel Rubin is also a delight. She was interviewed on Peter Attia's podcast. She's a urologist out of the States. And the reason I so deeply appreciate that specific podcast episode is because she calls out the medical doctors. And she says things like, I was teaching at a conference and an endocrinologist came up to me and said, I have no idea how to prescribe hormone therapy. And she says, what do you mean you don't know how to prescribe hormone therapy? You are an endocrinologist. Hormones are your specialty.
Yeah.
I can't say that.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right.
So therein lies the like, well, I'm going to show you that it's possible to do it. And isn't it interesting that I have to have a conversation with someone who lives on the other side of the world?
It's one of the freakiest things about my platform, which is just very odd because I'm a journalist. I'm not a doctor, but I interview all sorts of practitioners, is the gaps. It's really interesting. The gaps in knowledge, like the gaps between the practices, the gaps that doctors have in their own knowledge, just because the mainstream they're behind. Like they're behind and they're very much focused on
And it's the
specific
system.
treatment.
Yeah, like the system has forced them to be behind because it's so overwhelming. And of course, like I'm like, how do you treat a patient in 7 minutes? I
7
can't
minutes.
imagine.
Yeah.
So, like again, it's not the doctor, it's the system that's putting so much pressure on them. And of course, they don't have a lot of extra time.
But let's stress not
And
Dr. Vikram. He's not behind. He's literally got
yes,
the best
yeah. So you
grasp
do
of
have to
the
search.
research. Is his grasp of the research is so above and beyond
Yeah.
almost anyone I've
Yeah.
ever spoken to. Yeah.
And that's where things like the Menopause Society certification, I really do appreciate that. I'm Menopause Society certified now for 1 year. I think
Congratulations.
a significant number of those practitioners are naturopathic doctors. I've heard stories of OB/GYNs writing it and failing it. So
Mm,
like it just shows we're all human. That's all I'm saying. We're all human. We all have strengths and we all have flaws. And so why has it become such a like this or that, me, you dichotomous system that's based, I mean, it's so old and based in the patriarchy and we like unpack that. But ultimately it's like look for the person who is well qualified and look for the person who's doing the work because I spend so much time with patients listening to their stories, trying different things. That's why it's called the practice of medicine. Like there's no one way to do it all. And so, yes, have conversations with your girlfriends and colleagues and learn things and then put it through the filter of someone who is knowledgeable and accredited and experienced.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to make decisions on our own when it comes to those things like that. Like what supplement do I need or
Yeah.
what medication
So
do
all
I
the
need?
things you said, plus someone who listens, like someone who's going to listen and
Yes.
isn't going to invalidate what you're saying. That's really
Exactly.
what you need. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's amazing.
Isn't that a revolutionary concept?
Someone who listens. Well, yeah, I could ask you, and we didn't even get into some of the details, but we'll be talking again. So
Yeah,
we
I'll
better
come
wrap
back
it
in.
up. I've had you for a long time. But thank you. And thanks for your perspective. And I'm so proud of your event that you
Thank
had and
you.
the big smile on
Thanks.
your face. And it's just nice to talk to you again. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Save the date, October 4th, 2026.
Ooh, okay.
Hot Flash Inc. was created and is hosted by Ann Marie McQueen, produced and edited by Sonia Mack. The information contained in this podcast is intended for informational purposes only and is not intended for the purpose of diagnosing, treating, curing, or preventing any disease. Before using any products referenced on the podcast, consult with your healthcare provider, read all labels, and heed all directions and cautions that accompany the products. Information received through the podcast should not be used in place of a consultation or advice from a healthcare provider. If you suspect you have a medical problem, i.e. menopause or anything else, or any healthcare questions, please promptly see your healthcare provider. This podcast, including Ann Marie McQueen and any producers or editors, disclaim any responsibility from any possible adverse effects from the use of any information contained herein. Opinions of guests on this podcast are their own, and the podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about a guest's qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements and advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. This podcast is owned by Hot Flash Inc. Media.